Good day! So yung lesson natin ngayon ay functions that have inverses. Now, unlike dun sa previous natin na lessons, I would recommend na basahin natin yung modules for this topic. The modules for the inverses is one of the few that I feel are very well made for the set of modules natin nitong Math 3. So I'm including that file dun sa course site natin, and ito yung lecture na lang na component. Medyo mas condensed yung lessons dito. But if you have time, please go through the module for this one. Kasi mas detailed yung discussion at mas madami siyang examples. That being said, let's proceed. So yung gusto nating matutunan ngayon ay ma-connect yung function tsaka yung inverse niya. Paano silang dalawa related. And to do that, we need to know kung ang isang function ay one-to-one. Now, the idea of a one-to-one function should not be new to us kasi na-encounter natin siya noong grade 8. Pero babalikan natin siya mabilis. And using that information, yung one-to-one function at kung ano yung ina-expect nating relationship, we'll be able to determine yung inverses ng mga functions na may inverse. Kasi hindi lahat ng functions merong inverse function din sila. We'll use all these things para i-define kung ano ba ang inverse ng isang function. Let's do a recall. So, yung definition natin ay function, it's a rule that assigns every element in the domain to exactly one element in the range. So, it's essentially a rule that connects the elements of two sets. In these diagrams, ang function dito ay yung arrows, itong set ng arrows. If we take the collection of all these arrows, yun yung tatawagin nating function kasi yun yung rule na kinoconnect yung element sa domain na 1 sa element sa range na 3. Now, of course, by convention, yung pinanggagalingan natin na elements na set, yun yung domain. Yung pinupuntahan nila kung saan sila minamap, yun yung range. And we have the following descriptions of relations of mappings na kung ganito yung mapping, isang element sa domain to exactly one element in the range, one-to-one siya. Pag pwede nating ulitin yung element sa range, then it's many-to-one. Kung yung element sa domain na mamap siya to more than one element in the range, then it's one-to-many. And kung may multiple mappings yung element sa domain sa range, at the same time, yung element sa range na mamap from several elements of the domain, then it's many-to-many. Now, of these four categorizations, ang kinoconsider lang natin na function ay yung one-to-one or many-to-one. So, balikan natin ba't ganon. Every element in the domain to exactly one element in the range. Dun sa one-to-one, nasasatisfy niya yung description na yun. Pero dun sa many-to-one, check natin kung valid. Well, one element in the domain, nangyari si 2, namamap siya sa 4. Pero ilan yung namamap sa 2? Isa lang, si 4. Si negative 2, isa lang din yung namamap sa kanya sa range, si 4. So kahit umuulit yung pagmap ng elements na sa domain to a single element in the range, it still satisfies the definition. Dito sa not functions, si 9, namamap siya to 2 elements in the range. So it fails the definition. Now, these are all relations kasi they describe relationships between elements in a domain and range, but ang kinoconsider lang natin na functions ay itong unang dalawa. Out of these two, ang tututukan natin ng pansin ay yung one-to-one function. Meaning, hindi tayo pwedeng may element sa domain na namamap in the same element sa range as another element in the domain. Let's go to one-to-one functions and balikan natin yung definition. Ang function ay sinasabing one-to-one if for any two distinct elements, A and B, in the domain of that function, ang f of A palagi siyang hindi equal sa f of B. So meaning, hindi na mamap ang magkaibang elements na A and B sa same element in the range. Visually or graphically, ang description natin sa isang one-to-one function ay pumapasa ng horizontal line test. So, similar sa vertical line test natin for functions na kahit saan ako mag-draw ng vertical line, dapat isang point lang at most, kasi pwedeng wala. Isang point lang at most dun sa function ko yung tatamaan. Yung horizontal line test, kung ipapasa rin niya yung horizontal line test na kahit anong horizontal line ang i-drawing ko, ay maximum of 1 point lang in the function yung tatamaan, then it is a one-to-one function. This is a one-to-one function, it's linear, this is cubic, and this is a rational function na maybe f of x equals 1 over x minus 2. This is also a one-to-one function. Kasi if you notice, it will pass the horizontal line test, well, as well as the vertical line test. Now, if you're given a function, like for example, f of x equals x squared, this is not a one-to-one function kasi we could draw a horizontal line here and it will hit 2 points in the function. It will fail the horizontal line test. Pero minsan, kung kinakailangan, we could modify the domain. Sabihin natin, ay, hindi kasali yung mga negative values. In that case, we can force a quadratic function to be a one-to-one function. So you can notice, this will now pass the horizontal line test. Let's define what an inverse of a function is. So una, kailangan one-to-one yung function f para magkaroon siya ng inverse. So if f is a one-to-one function, as meron pa tayong isa pang function na g, such that g of f of x ay equal sa x, then g of x is an inverse function of f of x. At a better name for g of x, tatawagin na lang natin siyang f inverse of x. Hindi to 1 over, hindi siya raised to negative 1. Isa yan sa mga pangit na bagay sa notations natin sa math. Kung sino yung naunang gumawa, usually yun yung magsistick. Ngayon, minsan mayroon siyang conflict sa other notations, hindi na natin mabago. Yung isang thing na gusto kong ma-realize natin dito is, usually when we talk about functions, f of x, yung x yung input, f of x yung output. Ngayon, si g of f of x, ginagawa nating input sa g yung output ni f. Tapos, pag ang lumabas ay yung input ulit, kumbaga, you have an input, papasok mo sa isang machine, may lalabas. Yung output ng machine na yun, papasok mo sa isa pang machine, at babalik ka where you started, then those two machines sort of invert the function of each other. And generally, that's what we call inverses, yung dalawang machines na yun. I mean, that's how we want to visualize it sa functions. Let's look at that graphically. So here we have a one-to-one function, minamap natin yung bawat element in the domain to an element in the range. So, yung inverse niya is just reversing yung position ng dalawang sets. Yung range, since lahat ng yon isa lang yung kamap sa domain, yung reverse mapping nila, yung collection na yun, it's still a function. So, that reverse mapping is the inverse. So, parang yung sinabi ko kanina, may input tayo, negative 2, tatransform siya ng function to negative 5, and then, from negative 5, ibabalik niya sa negative 2. So parang binalik lang niya sa original. So this set of relationships essentially inverts yung isa pang set ng relationships. Kaya sila masasabing inverses ng isa't isa. Kasi bumabalik lang tayo sa x, yung original input natin. Now here, this is a function, but it is not a one-to-one function. Many-to-one siya. Pag in-invert natin yung relationship, well, it's still an inverse. But it's not an inverse function. It's just an inverse relationship. Kasi yung 2 na nasa bago nating domain, namamap siya sa more than one element dun sa range. So this is no longer a function. It's still a relation, and it's still an inverse of this function. But it's not an inverse function. So how do we proceed with finding the inverse of a function analytically? So these are just the steps. If you have an equation, a function, you will interchange the two variables. So yung x gagawin nating y, yung y gagawin nating x. And then we will isolate the new dependent variable, yung y. So again, pagpapalit natin yung x and y, and then essentially we'll solve for y. Yung checking step natin ay evaluate natin si f of f inverse at si f inverse of f. So I have some examples to discuss para makita natin to. So first example, we have f of x equals x cubed plus 1. And we can write this as y equals x cubed plus 1 para two variables. Para mahanap yung inverse, we'll interchange x and y. So we could now write this as x equals y cubed plus 1. And we want to isolate y. So y is equal to cube root of x minus 1. So we could write the inverse of f of x is cube root of x minus 1. Now we'll check. What is f of f inverse of x? So this is f inverse of x cubed plus 1. Papalitan lang natin yung x ng f inverse. And we substitute kung ano yung F inverse. We have here cube root of x minus 1, cube plus 1, but that simplifies to x minus 1, and that simplifies to x. So, na-check natin na ang f of f inverse of x ay pupuntang x. Check naman natin yung pangalawang scenario. F inverse of f of x, this is equal to cube root of f of x minus 1. And then f of x is x cubed plus 1. So, we replace f of x with x cubed plus 1 minus 1. Yung radicand, mag-simplify siya sa x cube, cube root of x cube is equal to x. And we can see that that also simplifies to x. And therefore, we could say na tama yung nakuha nating inverse. F inverse of x is indeed cube root of the quantity x minus 1. For our second example, this is a linear function. G of x equals 4x minus 3. Then we write it as y equals 4x minus 3. Then, ang g inverse natin ay yung makukuha natin pag in-exchange natin si x and y. So, x equals 4y minus 3. We solve for y. 4y equals x plus 3 and y equals x plus 3 over 4. So, we write it, g inverse of x is equal to x plus 3 over 4. Again, g of g inverse of x. Dapat x to. So, this is just 4 times g inverse of x minus 3. Simplify, we have x plus 3 minus 3, which is equal to x. So, the first part of the condition is satisfied. Yung second check natin si g inverse of g of x. Dapat equal din ito sa x. Now, g of x is 4x minus 3. So, g inverse of g of x is g of x plus 3 over 4. Pasok natin si g. So, g of x is 4x minus 3 plus 3 over 4. The numerator will simplify to 4x over 4, and the whole thing is equal to x. So, nasatisfy natin yung conditions for both checks, and we can say na tama yung nakuha nating inverse. Example 3, mas mahaba, rational. Capital F of x is equal to x plus 3 over 4x plus 5. So, sulat natin y equals x plus 3 over 4x plus 5. And to find f inverse of x, we interchange x and y. So, x is equal to y plus 3 over 4y plus 5. We multiply both sides by 4y plus 5. And we distribute. Tapos, we subtract y from both sides. Then, we subtract 5x from both sides. Then, we factor out y. And we divide both sides by 4x minus 1. Na-isolate na natin siya. So, sulat natin. Ang ating f inverse of x ay 3 minus 5x over 4x minus 1. Let's check. F of f inverse of x, this is equal to f inverse of x plus 3 over 4 f inverse of x plus 5. Pinalitan natin yung x ng f inverse of x. So that's 3 minus 5x over 4x minus 1 plus 3. Tapos 4 times 3 minus 5x over 4x minus 1 plus 5. Now, we multiply 4x minus 1 dun sa mga constant sa labas. We have 3 minus 5x plus 3 times 4x minus 1 all over 4x minus 1. That's the numerator dun sa kanina. All over, distribute ko na. 12 minus 20x plus 5 times 4x minus 1 all over 4x minus 1. So, pareho silang 4x minus 1. Cancel, cancel. So, we have 3 minus 5x plus 12 minus 3, 12x minus 3 all over 12 minus 20x plus 20x minus 5. Again, look, 3 and negative 3 cancel, negative 20 and 20x cancel. Yung numerator natin ay 7x, yung denominator natin ay 7. It simplifies to x. So, first check natin, na-satisfy yung conditions ng inverses. So, erase, erase. So, wala na tayong space. So, we could do the second check. Second check, f inverse of f of x, is this equal to x? So, ano ba muna yan? That is 3 minus 5 times f of x all over 4 f of x minus 1. So, pasok natin si f of x. We'll have this. We multiply for x plus 5 dun sa mga constants. We have 3 times 4x plus 5 minus 5 times x plus 3 all over 4x plus 5 all over 4 times x plus 3 minus 1 times 4x plus 5 all over 4x plus 5. Again, cancel, see 4x plus 5. Then we distribute. We have 12x plus 15 minus 5x minus 15 all over 4x plus 12 minus 4x minus 5. Minus yun. So, we'll have 7x sa numerator and 7 sa denominator, giving us x satisfying the conditions. And we could say that yung nakuha nating inverse kanina, yun talaga yung totoong inverse and our answer is correct. So here we have g of x is equal to x squared plus 2x plus 1. So, quadratic, parabola yung graph. This is not a one-to-one function. So, sulat natin siya as y equals x squared plus 2x plus 1. G inverse, pagpalitan natin yung x and y. So, x equals y squared plus 2y plus 1. Y dapat yan. So, x equals quantity y plus 1 squared. Or square root of x equals y plus 1. Pero ang square root, pag nag-square tayo both sides, plus minus yon. Hindi pwedeng plus lang. So, yung resulting natin na possible inverse, it's not a function. So therefore, the inverse of capital G of x, it's not a function. We could still say that nahanap natin yung inverse niya, but it's not an inverse function. At ang concern lang natin for now ay inverse functions. So we won't proceed with checking, we won't proceed with anything. Kasi nakita natin na hindi na siya function. How about visually? Let's say we have a graph of a function. Paano natin nahanapin yung inverse ng isang function based on this graph? If we go with the procedure yung ginawa natin kanina, pagpapalitin din natin yung x and y. But how do we do that graphically? If you flip natin yung graph para yung x at y axis mag-change ng position. Pero we do that such that yung positive x nagko-correspond sa positive y, yung positive y nagko-correspond sa positive x. So it's not a simple rotation. So pag ni-rotate natin siya, yung positive x pupunta sa negative y, yung positive y pupunta sa positive x. Dapat positive sa positive, negative sa negative. So if we are to use our language ng first quarter, we will perform a mirror reflection about the diagonal line y equals x. Okay, so here I have a piecewise function. So what do? I select this point. It's 1, negative 1. Then, pagpapalit ko yung y and x, magpa-plot ako ng point sa negative 1, 1. Yun yung corresponding point niya dun sa inverse. I have another point, it's negative 1, 2. So, yung corresponding point niya ay 2, negative 1. Sama ko na rin yung dulo ng ray or nung arrowhead. It's negative 4, 4. So, correspond siya sa 4, negative 4. And si 2, negative 4, magko-correspond sa 4, negative 4, 2. And then we connect the dots. Oops, medyo ano yung line. Gamit na tayong ruler. Connect. And connect. Now, how do we make sure na siya yung inverse? Sabi natin, dapat para lang tayong nag-perform ng mirror reflection about the line y equals x. So if we draw the line y equals x, that's the yellow diagonal line, tapos inilipat natin yung graph ng inverse natin, ay mas madali nating makita na siya talaga ay mirror reflection ng blue na graph across the yellow line, the line y equals x. So pag finold natin siya, magko-correspond yung mga points nila. So it is the inverse of the blue function. Next example, ito namang cubic na function. So let's take a look at that. That's 0, 1, yung intercept. So magko-correspond siya sa 1, 0. Tadaan yung point doon. Next point na pipiliin natin na ito, 3 point something. So, around 3 point something, 3. Correspond siya doon. Yung dulo, negative 3 point something at negative 3. Teka, ang pangit. Parehong 3 point something. Approximate natin. Negative 3.5 at negative 3.2. So, approximate lang. Correspond siya sa negative 3.2 tsaka negative 3.5. Approximately lang ulit. Okay, now notice dito sa point na to, parang as it crosses 0, 1, parang pa-horizontal. So that means kung i-cross niya si 1, 0, pa-vertical yung direction. So yun yung gamitin nating guide. Kumuha pa pala ako ng isa pang point. Negative 2 point something and 0, 0, negative 2 point something. So papadaanin ko dun yung curve, approximate, and connect. And that is the graph of my inverse. So yun, parang it crosses 0, 1 na flat horizontally. So approximately it will cross 1, 0 na vertical. I'm not sure kung madaling makita dito na mirror reflection sila. So gawin natin ginawa natin kanina. Let's draw the line y equals x at ilipat natin yung drawing ko ng inverse. Mas madali natin makita na meron talaga silang mirror reflection relationship across the line y equals x. One more example, this is a rational function. So I will start with the asymptotes kasi ganun din yung asymptotes. Kung x equals something sa original function, magiging y equals something siya dun sa inverse kasi magpapalit yung x and y. So I'll draw the vertical asymptote here. This is the line x equals 1. Magko-correspond siya sa horizontal line na y equals 1. Then yung horizontal asymptote natin dito na y equals negative 2, magko-correspond siya sa x equals negative 2. Okay, let's map some points. So, kumuha kong point approximately 1, 4. Hindi pwedeng 1, 4 kasi nasa asymptote yun. Approximate lang. Tapos, mamamap siya approximately sa 4, 1. Next, kung kukunin yung x-intercept. So, that's approximately 1 something and 0. So, punta tayo sa 0 and 1 something. Minap ko din pala tong 0 and negative 2 point something na map sa negative 2 point something and 0. So, yun na lang yung ginamit kong basis para i-draw tong curve na to. Then, we'll draw that curve there. So, gumamit tayo ng existing points dun sa original function natin. Pinagpalit natin yung x and y, pinlat natin dun sa Cartesian plane nung inverse at ginamit natin siya to connect the dots. Now, let's see kung talagang mirror reflection itong original function. So, similarly sa una, drawing natin yung line y equals x at i-move natin yung drawing natin. At yan, mas visible na mirror reflection na talaga siya nung green. So, the blue function corresponding to the inverse is a mirror reflection of our original function na 1-to-1, yung green, about the line y equals x. That's it. Let's recap. Ang inverse ng isang 1-to-1 function, function din siya. Tapos, ang f at f inverse ay masasabi nating inverses ng isa't isa. Pag in-evaluate natin na f of f inverse of x ay equal sa x, same kay f inverse of f of x, babalik tayo sa x. Again, meron tayong input, dadaan siya sa isang function, may lalabas na output. Yung output, ipapasok mo sa inverse, babalik ka sa original input mo. To find the inverse of a function analytically, we just exchange c, x, and y variables and isolate the new dependent variable. Again, the dependent variable is y, usually. And to find the inverse of a function graphically, yung lahat ng points, essentially pagpapalitin natin yung x and y coordinate, yung 2, 1 magiging 1, 2, and so on. And this is also equivalent to performing a mirror reflection on the original function about the line y equals x. So, thank you very much and I'll see you sa next lesson natin.